Hello everyone, my name is Sanchita Prakash and I'll be presenting on the topic sexual harassment and the MeToo movement. So I have done a report analysis and I would like to first start begin with defining what is the MeToo movement. So the MeToo movement was started by sexual harassment survivor and activist Tarana Burke in 2007 as a way of calling out perpetrators of sexual harassment on social media. She used the hashtag MeToo in her tweet to encourage other women to speak about sexual harassment. Although used in 2007, the hashtag gained popularity in 2017 in the wake of allegations against Harvey Weinstein, who was a prominent Hollywood director, and the further push given by an actress, Alyssa Milano, and other prominent actors like Gwyneth Paltrow, Terry Crews, etc., encouraging people to call out instances of sexual harassment and assault. The social media movement gained huge popularity across the globe and was covered by all mainstream media channels and recognized by governments as well. So why is the MeToo important? The hashtag went viral on all social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. After the tweet of Elisa Milano, the hashtag was retweeted more than 5 lakh times on Twitter and used in more than 12 million posts on Facebook within 24 hours. This just highlights the fact that sexual harassment and sexual assault is a rampant and malicious practice in societies across the world. It is not limited to only some countries or some places in the world. It also brought up the fact that instances of sexual harassment go largely unreported and thus remain outside the purview of law enforcement because this movement went viral on social media, whereas cases of sexual harassment and assault were not that much available or seen in the law enforcement studies. So my next report, so the first report that I analyzed was measuring MeToo. This study was conducted by the University of California, San Diego Center of Gender Equity and Health. So this study was conducted to ascertain the magnitude of sexual harassment and assault in the USA. It was conducted in 2019, 1.5 years after the viral of the hashtag MeToo. The study defines sexual harassment and sexual assault. So first I'd like to tell you about what the study defines sexual harassment as. So the study defines sexual harassment as verbal sexual harassment, which includes gender-biased slurs, staring, leering, inappropriate comments about one's body, or sexually explicit comments. On online or cyber sexual harassment, which includes repeated stalking online, unnecessary or repeated calling, texting, show of sexual content on social media apps, or taking of video or pictures without permission. And the third is physically aggressive sexual harassment, which includes flashing genitals, stalking in public, or deliberate touching of the victim. The study also separately defines sexual assault as an act where someone was forced to do acts against their will and without their consent. So the findings of this study include that nationwide in the USA, 81% of women and 43% of men reported experiencing some form of sexual harassment or assault in their lifetime. Sexual harassment takes place across a range of locations, but most frequently the listed location in the study was a public space, like a park or a school or the marketplace. Most sexual assault, that is when people are forced to do acts without their consent, took place in private homes or residences. Those who reported sexual assault, sexual harassment alone were most likely to report that a stranger committed it, like being called out or teased, while those reporting assault as well as harassment were more likely to say that somebody close to them or somebody who knew were involved in the abuse. The next finding was that sexual harassment and assault cause people, especially women, to feel anxiety or depression and prompt them to change their routine or regular routine. This is important because while the law enforcement provides remedial procedures for women of sexual harassment, the law does not necessarily provide provisions for mental health problems or help to these women. The next was at least one third of women aged between 18 to 24, Black women and lesbian and bisexual women reported experiencing sexual harassment in the past 6 months. That was in the months between January to June 2019. Most people who said that they committed sexual harassment also said they had experienced sexual assault. While experiences of sexual harassment and assault are very highly prevalent, as was evident in the MeToo blew up on social media, accusations of sexual harassment and assault are very rare. Like, people very rarely report them. And beliefs related to high-profile allegations of sexual harassment and assault are comparable for men and women. Like, when there are high-profile celebrities against whom there are sexual allegations, like Nana Patekar was alleged in India, and Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. So there is a divide between men and women who believe them. Now, these are some charts which were shown in the study. The first chart shows that 81% women reported all forms of sexual harassment. Cybersexual assault was reported by 40% women, and physically aggressive sexual harassment was reported by 58% females. The diagram below that, it shows the locations where men and women most frequently report sexual harassment. Most prominent of them are public spaces. Then it is their participants, institutions like schools or colleges or places of work. And the third most prominent is the known residences, private homes, and cars, which are private places only. The third diagram shows the forms of sexual harassment and men report having experienced. So the most prominent of them is being called a gender bias slur or a racial slur, like sexy mommy, mama sita, granny for trans persons, and stuff like that. Then it includes stalking and physically aggressive assaults. Now, the second report that I analyzed was the participatory research study into sexual harassment and domestic workers in Gurgaon and South Delhi, India, and the MeToo movement. So this study centers around the awareness about sexual harassment and the MeToo movement among domestic workers in India. So this report, it also defines sexual harassment and explains who are the domestic workers in India. So the ILO, that is the International Labour Organization, defines sexual harassment as any behavior of a sexual nature that affects the dignity of women and men, that is considered unwanted, unacceptable, inappropriate, and offensive to the recipient, and that creates an intimidating, hostile, unstable, or offensive work environment. So this study centers around domestic workers, and there it also includes the perception of what these women consider sexual harassment in their places of work. So the findings of the study include the first finding of the study is that the most domestic workers around the world are women. Secondly, the National Domestic Workers Movement, it is an organization, seeks to make unions for domestic workers so that they are organized and their rights are recognized. Now, not every state in India recognizes domestic work as a trade, like an economic activity. And this acts as a setback for domestic workers, especially women who try to organize themselves and demand rights. There was no awareness about the very huge MeToo movement among the participating domestic workers. Also, the definition of sexual harassment as given by these domestic workers, who were all women, was that of involuntary touching, teasing, staring, quid pro quo arrangements, which involved doing some acts to the employers in exchange for better pay or promotion. This study also found that women recognize harassment even without any formal training or introduction to sexual harassment norms. Fourthly, and very important, in an art sari project, respondents of study were asked to cross-stitch whatever sexual harassment and experience of it meant to them, giving a pictorial visual depiction of harassment in everyday life. Now, this research was conducted by an individual researcher. So she started out by trying to take survey and one-on-one deep interviews with these domestic workers, but that was not possible. So she conducted this activity in association with the Martha Carroll Foundation. She was associated with them. So she conducted this study where she asked these domestic workers and girls who were between the age of 18 to 35 and 45 to cross-check whatever sexual harassment meant to them. I'd like to quote some of these things that are cross-stitched on these saris. They're written in Hindi. I'll translate them in English. Uh, so it says, when somebody touches us inappropriately, we get really scared and we don't have the guts to tell anybody. Whenever a man harasses a woman, she shouts for help, but nobody comes to her rescue. And on one of these cross-stitch saris is also written, my employer asked me to wear short clothes because I look good in them. So, in conclusion, what I've concluded from these two studies is that what I've concluded from these studies that sexual harassment as a whole is not a problem specific to law enforcement or within the purview of authorities that make laws and implement them, but it is also a problem of a larger skewed and gender biased societal structure that is not country or economic specific. Like the prevalence of patriarchy across all societies is a problem because it gives rise to gender biases in the society and leads to the subjugation, objectification, and violence against certain groups of citizens and people, which is not just. Secondly, the MeToo movement, which is considered like a very large movement to bring out sexual harassment, it brought the issue into the limelight, but it has remained restricted to social media and has not been able to reach the economically and weaker sections of the society, because as in the second study I told you that the domestic workers working in our homes and offices do not really know about the sexual harassment, about this movement, and what institutional sexual harassment means and how it is affecting the society at large, even though they are the majority of groups who are affected by it. That's it. I'd like to take any questions or queries regarding this presentation.